10x future, a 10x GCC, means a quantum leap. A quantum leap in pretty much everything. We look at talent, we look at industry models and business models, technology. But above all, we look at a quantum leap in our mindset. We said the time for contemplation is over, and it's now time for action. But today we will contemplate, Nilesh and I that is, and hopefully you will have something that you can take home and action. But before we do that, there is a time for appreciation and acknowledgement. The GCC industry today, we have come a long way. We are both young and vibrant. At the same time, we are also sage and mature in terms of where we have got to. In some of the industries and GCCs that you run, we run great products. There's great innovation happening, wonderful talent, ownership of portfolios. But yet, there is still something that we have to go to. Pari famously said that in 6 years' time, there will be 0 GCCs, which means all of those that are clustered in that satellite and portfolio will move and become transformational hubs. What are transformational hubs? Nilesh, what are they indeed?
Yeah, so one good way to measure, and Dipesh Shah, you'll see his video in a little while. I think he put it very succinctly. Look at your CEO's top 3 priorities, and if you're not on one of them, you're not a transformation hub. So figure out how you're going to get into the top 3. And every year you need to be there. That's one way of looking at it. GCCs are not order takers. You are growth catalysts. You should be, when a third or 40% of your employees are residing right here in Bangalore or in India somewhere, if you don't take the initiative to grow the company can't grow. So that's what you need to do. You need to be, a CEO should be calling you for an important priority because you are the top 3 in his list. So that's one way to measure. So, go ahead.
So when we looked at transformational hubs, we had to start at the top. We absolutely had to start and talk about leadership and what we called leadership density. So we ran a quick data check. We looked at all of our 1,700 GCCs and how much of that talent is in India today, tech talent in India today, and it was around 32%. But you know what? We had less than 10% of the global tech leadership in India. So clearly, there was a leadership quotient that was missing. And then we asked the question, is it different for those companies, think of a Bosch or an Adobe or a Microsoft, who are really in that transformational unit, how much of their leadership is in India? So we ran that test. We took that top 50 GCCs today over here, out of the 1,700, both in terms of transformation, product portfolio, ownership, and accountability. And we asked, how much of the leadership is in India? You know what? That number doubled. So we are actually saying, if you were to invest in good leadership, talk about having transformational leadership, then you are on your way to having a lot more impact, a lot more influence, a seat at your CEO's priorities. And that's what we want to really do. But Nilesh, what about leadership? What are your thoughts around it?
Yeah, there are secondary effects of not having global, in addition to what Karthik just mentioned. So we did actually a project for a company here. They've been here for 15 years. And they had a 27% attrition number. And so the CEO called us and said, what's going on? So we looked at their pyramid. They had like 3% leadership compared to 14% globally. They are director and above roles. And everything else, the pyramid was very, very bloated in the middle. So the people coming in were getting stuck in the middle. They have nowhere to go up. So the only way to grow is to go out. And that was one easy way to figure out why they're having such a... And when we suggested to show this to the CEO, he said, how come I never saw this before? So this is probably happening in almost every GCCs because you have very few roles on the top. There is nowhere for your high performers to get up, so they go out. So make sure you have a growth plan for these employees who are extremely motivated to change the world, but you're not giving them an opportunity or the platform. Make sure you create room for them. So.
Right. And when you talk about leadership, it's not actually any kind of leadership. It is what Stanford calls as systems leadership. And we looked it up, right? And systems leadership is really not a new concept. It's been around for the last 10 years or so, but it's very relevant, especially for GCCs. So systems leaders are those who can work in intersections, right? Who can think physical and digital, who can think engineering and customers, who can think on-site, offshore, who can think in the concept of duality. And the concept of duality in your GCCs have become very, very critical. So let me give you an example of a systems leader. A systems leader will be able to connect aspects of what is happening in a data analytics or building out a data lake, for example, putting a data architecture, to having great shopping experience. Thinking about electronic health records, for example, and how does that relate to patient health, right? So those kinds of leaders who are able to make the connection between what happens within your centers to how does it create great outcomes for consumers and customers, those are system leaders. And those are the kind of leaders that we need to develop. But then we went further. We went and asked a couple of our eminent leaders, right? We started with Deepesh, who's now the head of global R&D for Samsung right out here. He may not be over here because he's attending something else, but we asked him, what makes great leaders? What do you mean by global roles, local roles, and so on? And this is what he had to say.
Global role or local role, basically it's the perspective that you have about your business. So in my opinion, one thing that matters most is to understand what does your organization stand for? Okay, like what is that one thing that you can deliver the best in the world? What is that unique thing that you can deliver to your consumers? So have a clear view about this and keep demonstrating that you understand this view in every meeting, every conversation, every interaction. And all the activities that we do basically should match, align with this thing. This center has world's best expertise that needs to be identified, defined, communicated, and confirmed by all the global stakeholders, which we internally call accumulated experience.
So Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, talks about the hedgehog mentality, being great in one thing, and make sure that we are actually recognized for it, appreciated for it. Deepesh calls it accumulated experience and saying, we are great in this, we are the best in this, and everywhere from the world will come to this center for that particular work that we do. And that's exactly what we also need to do. Find what is your accumulated experience and be that hedgehog over there. We then also asked Jay Doshi from British Telecom in terms of what he thinks about global roles, and here is what he had to say.
In the technology world, the way I would describe the ownership is where you start having ownership of a strategy, design, build, operate, and refresh of the strategy, all the whole cycle, and you own it. You own the people, you own the process, you own the budget, you own the outcome, and above all, you have the accountability. So there isn't anything called as an India priority, UK priority, US priority. There's one priority, and that's the priority of the stakeholders. First and foremost, trust. Build trust. Develop a deep understanding of the organization, people in the organization, culture of the organization, the assets that exist within the organization and the ecosystem, and the future horizon of the company, the challenges, opportunities.
So as Jay mentions, what are you accountable for and what are you going to deliver? What is your say-do ratio? Is it always one? When you say we're going to get this done, get it done. There is no if, buts, and thens, right? You understand the customer. One of the things which I have a test for GCCs, I go and ask the individual contributor, who is your customer? And surprisingly, a lot of, still today, my customer is the headquarters. No, your customer is not a headquarters. Your customer is your company's customer. So make sure that's not happening, right? If your employees in your GCCs think that your customer is headquarters, they're going to work like that. They're going to think like that. The customer needs to be, and I just spoke to this a couple of days ago, this is a financial company, and when I asked this question, the leader there said, yeah, today even my employees, even in the US, think my customers are internal stakeholders. They don't think they're the hedge fund managers who are using my software. So that's something we need to change. Make sure that everybody in the company understands the customer deeply, what are their pain points, how are you going to solve them, and they understand what it takes to build a great business. So.
All right, so that's about leadership. Now we'll get down to something else. Many of you saw this yesterday, and all of you eternal optimists out there, I know what you answered as well, but we had to put the slide out back again. And we looked at it and said, just within a few square miles in the Bay Area, history of AI is being written right now. Right? And what did that take? Right? What did that take really? We spoke about having great technology firms, great talent. We looked at the ability to now go and do R&D in academia universities, and we had funding as well. I asked, and that was the answer, what ChatGPT gave me as what makes Silicon Valley special, and it gave me all of these answers. And there was one more thing, Nilesh?
I think the main thing which, if you be to Silicon Valley, people want to change the world. They're uncomfortable with the status quo. The risk taking, the capital available there. And I think the biggest one which we'll talk, if you ask today in India who are the top businessmen, they are Ambanis or Birlas or Tatas. If you ask in the US, it's Satya Nadella, it's like Sundar, it's Sergey Brin. Why are our tech people not the top? When is that going to change? So we need role models who, that's what's going to lead to this change. Where are our India's role models in the technology world? We need that, and hopefully we can create those. So.
Absolutely, because I join you, optimists, in saying the opportunity is right here. The opportunity is right here in the same few square miles that we have in Bangalore. We have pretty much all of those ingredients. We have all of those startups. We have got great technology firms. We have got GCCs. We have got great minds out there. And we have got ability for us to collaborate with the academia as well. But as Nilesh said, there are a few missing ingredients, right? And we are talking about what those 3 or 4, or maybe even 1 or 2 missing ingredients that makes the difference between a Silicon Valley and the Bangalore out here. And I asked ChatGPT, they told me the same thing. It had great food, great traffic, it had the hustle, the great cosmopolitan vibe. It has got all of those ingredients, but then there are a couple of missing ingredients, and we're going to talk a little bit about them, right? One of those is actually funding, and we've got to put it where it really talks about, right? We did some research, and we actually said for us to have some amount of breakthrough innovations, and when I'm talking about breakthrough innovations, I'm talking about those features that make it into the product, the changes that you make that consumers are willing to pay extra for, changes that make the business models change. That number that we are talking about is not very much. But it's still in the range of $2 million. We need to have some funding of $2 million that enables an ability to innovate to a point where it hits your product, right? And when we start looking at the top 50 GCCs, we also saw that only 38 of them, and this, remember, we're talking about the top 50 GCCs, have a funding of 2 million and above within India right now. If I increase the lens and widen that out, the number keeps dropping even further. There are less than 20% of our centers today who are able to innovate along with startups who have a startup program. We also know that if you look at the patents filed in the last 2 years, between 2021 to 2023, in those 3 years, we have more than 378,000 patents that have been filed by the same firms who have GCCs in India. Except that less than 7% of those patents are being filed out of India. But not that it can't be done, right? If you look at what Oracle does, for example, 41% of their global patents are from India. Nokia's 21% of their patents are from India, right? So it is possible where organizations are filing patents from India and the number is pretty high. So they are able to do so, and they're able to do it through good collaboration. Again, look at the amount of academia funding. Right? If I again take the same top 50 centers, they spend $11.5 billion in academia research along with the top 3 universities. So Stanford, Oxford, MIT gets $11.5 billion in spending in innovation and research from the top 50 organization. But then you compare that to an IIT Madras, IIT Bombay, and IIT Delhi, for the same firms in the GCC, it goes less than 3%. So there is a propensity to actually go put money where we want to innovate in from an India perspective. So that's one area that we have to look at.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, I feel that when I talk to some leaders here, we tend to handcuff ourselves. Sometimes they want to spend $10,000, they say, I need permission from the US. That seems like if you're a VP in a company, if you need 10,000, then there's something is wrong. You should think about what's going on there. You shouldn't need that. If you're creating value, you're creating innovation, you're growing the company, that's something you should not be needing. I think sometimes you may want to you may personally feel that you need permission for that, but you shouldn't need it. I mean, this is just showing you that, and I told you earlier, the reason Silicon Valley is able to do this, there is capital. Obviously, there's a lot of capital which is available there. There's a risk-taking attitude and aptitude. Everybody wants to change the world. Make it happen. That's something which you need to drive for within your own companies. I saw yesterday, we saw Continental winning the Innovation Award. I don't think that would happen in that company where they are changing it. In fact, I had a panel yesterday with another leader from Continental, and he's extremely excited about the team here. So there are companies which are doing it figure out what are they doing. If you need to learn from them, use one of them as a mentor and figure out how they're making it happen. So.
Not that it can't be done, though. Our Indian corporates are showing the way. Frankly speaking, I had to put it out there because as we speak, right now, this very moment, the biggest wedding in the history of weddings is happening, right? So, right? And therefore, we had to put Reliance out there. But I dare say, the ability for them to pull off an event like that or a marriage like that is because Reliance dared to dream. They dare to dream, but they also put money into innovation. So they have innovation programs like Mission Kurukshetra, they have the GeoLeap program, and so on, which has created some path-breaking innovations. You look at GeoBharat, for example, a 4G phone that is actually being sold at 1,000 rupees. They've got new commerce that connects all the Kirana shops, for example. They've got a hydrogen IC engine developed. They are into biosynthetics. So there are a lot of things that are coming out of the industrial work in the innovation work that Reliance has put through. Same holds good for a company like Airtel, for instance, right? India boasts of the second fastest 5G rollout in the world, right? And Airtel has just expanded. It's all over your phones, all over Airtel Mart and so on. But hey, that's because on the background, they have invested. They have invested in startups like Weibo, Level, Synergy, and so on and so forth. And it's because of that, and they did this 10 years ago. And it's paying off right now in terms of where it's getting to. And I can go on. So Tata has an innovation program called the Innoverse. We have Maruti Suzuki has an innovation lab. We have Mahindra Logistics who has Catapult. So all of them have multi-million-dollar innovation programs that's running a lot of the industrial innovation. So Indian enterprises are still showing the way.
Yeah, one of the other things which, when I was looking at this, the Reliance is based in Mumbai. None of these top Indian companies seem to be based in Bangalore. What's going on? Bangalore, you need to fix this. Right? All these big conglomerates, even the companies which we think are innovating, they should be coming from here. So let's figure out next time, in maybe next 5 years, as Pari says, one of those companies will be based here. I think Birla is kind of headquartered here, but the top, like Adani is in Ahmedabad and Reliance is in Mumbai, and they're out of this area, which I believe Bangalore is the best likelihood of becoming the Silicon Valley, second Silicon Valley of the world, and we need to figure out how some of these big companies are recognized from here. So,
right. But we also have to say that there are challenges. We can't not have challenges, right? I'm sure that there is a book being written out there about the GCC industry in India, right? And a powerful biography about the GCC. It obviously cannot say that, hey, headquarters gave us money, we had great leaders, we got supported all the way, and we did it big. It had to have challenges. What else would you write in the book, isn't it? Right? But what are those challenges? Mainly these are the ones. We have to really go fight for our position in the decision-making table, but it's not a fight that does not come. It's not going and demanding for that. It is about having that accountability and trust. It is about having that shared experience, the accumulated experience that Dipesh spoke about. That gets you a rightful place in your leadership over there. So that's one, but that is today a challenge as well. We also have to look at funding, right? And Nilesh and I contemplated back and forth about this institutionalized innovation model. I argued that there should be one innovation process globally, one innovation fund globally where both the teams are working towards it. But then, Nilesh, is that the way we should go it?
No, I think it's not institutional. It needs to be inherent in the company, right? You need to, the people from bottoms up need to feel that they. When we started Intuit in 2004, 2005, the per capita pattern generated out of, and these are patterns which are acquired, were higher from Bangalore than in Mountain View. So you can create that environment where people are flourishing, and so figure out what it needs to. Each company obviously has its own requirements, but so I don't know whether the institutionalizes was the way. Because I actually wanted to do something which Mountain View wasn't doing. I want to do something which you can do it here. So if you try to follow, that may not work for India. So figure out what's right for your company and put in the processes. And from very first day, I knew customer knowledge, a passion for the product, passion for what you're doing is important, so we put in processes in place. We created a whole product management. At that time, there was no enough product management or UI UX design. We created those roles here, and we were able to build upon that, and that was what led to and today, fortunately, Intuit still continues to be one of the top GCCs in the country. So.
India has plenty of everything, and plenty of everything also has its own challenges. Sometimes in innovation, you need to find those fei-feis, those geniuses who are out there, right? And sometimes finding them is sometimes finding a needle in a haystack. So also finding that genius, those people who can actually change the world, who are persistent, whose resilience comes through, sometimes is more difficult in India because of the problem of plenty, right, in a way. So identifying that, we need to have frameworks but which we can also find and unearth those people and also look at seeing how we can go and educate them, right? So that's probably what we have. So in summary, I'll leave you with three things, right? One, look at building great leadership. One, look at having an institutionalized innovation process that can bring everything in and invest in the ecosystem. That's what we have to do.
And the last thing I would add, do not compromise on the quality of talent. It's not quantity, it's quality of talent, right? Focus on hiring the best people who are going to get you there. Don't try to become the biggest GCCs. Try to become the best GCC. So.
And you know what Roger Federer said in his Dartmouth interview or his speech that he said that effortless is a myth, right? And he put in a lot of effort to make his tennis seem effortless. But you know what? If we put in those hard yards, maybe we can be world champions as well.